All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Going to talk today a little bit about NSAIDs and running and what the conventional wisdom says and what we're telling you. But before we get into that, I want to ask you guys if you want to give us a subscribe below. Would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It'll help us get more information out to you in the future. So shameless little plug. We hate doing it, but we really appreciate all the attention and the following we've been getting and the feedback. So the more you can help us, the more we can help you. Now that that's out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Over-the-counter Advil, Alieve, Ibuprofen, naproxen, things like that. And then you have some prescription ones as well. And their main job is right in their title, anti-inflammatories. Their job is to get rid of that inflammation in the body. Before we go down that path and talk a little bit more about what they do, I want to talk about how they do what they do. So we have things in our bodies called prostaglandins. Now, without getting too technical and too fancy here, prostaglandins can be good or they can be bad and less desirable, right? But they're still a normal part of the body's process. Let's talk about the good prostaglandins, right? These are the ones that are responsible for lining your stomach and your intestinal system, right? Your GI tract. So that mucus lining, that mucus membrane that we have coating your GI tract is good because it protects the precious lining of your stomach and GI system from the acids that are supposed to digest your foods and everything we consume. So we know that acids are bad, right? So if your acids start to come in too close contact with your stomach wall or your intestines, things like that, you can start to get some irritation. Most people get ulcers. You can get a lot of different inflammatory conditions from that, right? And uncomfortable conditions. So prostaglandins are really good and responsible for making a thicker mucous membrane and mucus lining in your GI system. That's one of the reasons that they tell you before you take NSAIDs, you should take them on a full stomach, right? Otherwise, NSAIDs will affect the prostaglandins and actually diminish their ability to create that mucus lining, and therefore you might be at a higher risk of ulcers. That's one of the reasons it's contraindicated. So if you have a history of ulcers, that's one of the things you want to be careful of, right? So that's one way prostaglandins can be good. Another way that they can be good is they help maintain proper homeostasis and homeostatic functions within your body. So for today's practical purposes, we're going to talk about the kidneys. Prostaglandins are really important for helping your kidneys maintain proper blood flow rate and other functions that have to do with the volume of blood going through them. Your kidneys' main job is to filter your blood. Anything that affects their ability to do that is going to cause issues, right? So that's something we're going to want to keep in mind for the duration of today's discussion. So those are two really important functions of prostaglandins in the body, right? Maintaining the mucous membrane for your GI tract and also helping the kidneys function properly. Now, the bad news is prostaglandins are also responsible for inflammation in your body. This is what most people take NSAIDs for. They got a swollen knee, they have a shoulder injury, anything in the body that has to deal with inflammation. Oftentimes, it will be suggested that they take NSAIDs, right? And this is really important because we want to control that inflammatory process at times. At times, it's necessary, like normal training, right? Soreness that's experienced from normal training bouts, whether it's strength training, resistance training, or running and endurance training, that's okay. We want your body to undergo that normal soreness because that's the inflammatory process that's responsible for helping heal your body. That's the only reason we train, is to make sure that we can improve from it, right, and get better. So you want to respond better, faster, stronger after any training session. That's the goal after all, right? So taking NSAIDs will eliminate that inflammatory process, and that's one mistake that people make is they'll take NSAIDs after soreness after a workout because they don't want to be sore. Well, there's been studies that show that actually that diminishes the beneficial response and training effect from that training session. So that's one no-no. We don't want you to do that, right? But there are other times where that amount of inflammation is not okay after an injury. Sometimes it's necessary to have to take them, right? It'll help mitigate that excessive swelling and inflammation. So that's one of those times we don't want that inflammatory process and that inflammatory response to linger for too long. Your body's really good at instating that inflammatory process and not always the best at mitigating it. So there are times and there's a place for them. Right now, growing up in a medical family, right, I know all too well how frequently these things have been prescribed, and we know a lot more now. I love talking to my father about that. He's a retired orthopedic surgeon, sports med specialist, and we talk often about how the field has changed and things are so dynamic that what was once the gold standard of treatment, we know now is not. And any good practitioner should be able to adapt with the times. And so it's time that we're here to tell you enough is enough with NSAIDs, right? They serve a very specific beneficial purpose, but aside from that, let's get away from taking them prophylactically, all right? What I mean by that is let's get away from taking them preventatively. And for the intent of this discussion, right, I'm talking about my runners, my endurance athletes. I don't want you to take them before your training session. I don't want you to say, well, you know what, this has been bothering me, so I want to take them before my long run or before my swim or my cycling. It's actually, it has zero ergogenic effects, which is a performance effect, right? People take them with the notion that it's going to help their training session and make them better, when in reality, there's been zero proof that they have a positive ergogenic effect on the training session. You're not going to get a beneficial response for your training session or for your race effort with them, okay? So let's put that aside. Let's put that out to pasture. The other thing is, remember, understand what your body undergoes during a training session and understand what it undergoes when you ingest these NSAIDs, okay? So first and foremost, again, prophylactically, there's zero evidence that it'll actually support it and help you, right? And number two, it's actually going to be more detrimental. So on your body, it's going to implement a lot of stress, and that's what I want to talk to you about today, right? I don't want to fearmonger today. I don't want to tell you that, you know, they're always bad. What I want to tell you is that there are times when it's good, but training and endurance training is not a time that, you know, NSAID should have a normal place in your arsenal, okay? And this is why. So the prevalence of NSAID usage amongst endurance athletes is ridiculously high. It's up to like 70% of people or runners have admitted taking them prophylactically, okay? But 93% of people or runners have actually admitted that they're unaware of the contraindications associated or the negative effects associated with using NSAIDs during training. So that right there to me is a red flag, and it's a perfect opportunity for us to get in there and educate the general public and our running population about what are some of the better alternatives, but more importantly, what are some of the serious side effects and potential risks associated with using NSAIDs, okay? So what that means is understanding what your body goes through during a normal training session. When you exercise, you're actually breaking down your muscles, right? Your muscle fibers. So if you do a blood study, we'll see what's known as creatinine in the bloodstream. And this is something that the kidneys cannot filter that well. Your kidney's main job is to filter blood. And when you exercise, you're breaking down those muscle fibers because you're using them. Just like if I'm going to go in the gym, I'm going to exercise, you're actually breaking down your muscle fibers as you lift weights and do resistance training. And your body's main job is to build back better, faster, stronger. Now, your kidneys are really good at filtering at a certain level, but like anything else, if you have too much of something in your bloodstream, right, or in this case, too much of those broken down muscle fibers, that creatinine inside the bloodstream, above a level that's acceptable, your kidneys are going to start to have a really hard time, and it can actually be very toxic and detrimental to your kidneys. So this is something seen in a lot of high-intensity training programs. We'll see something called rhabdomyolysis, and that's basically excessive muscle fiber breakdown that's being toxic to your kidneys, right? And I'm drastically simplifying this for the purpose of today's discussion. I don't want to overcomplicate things. Let's be very reductionist here. When you work out, your muscles break down. If you work out too vigorously or something that's really above and beyond what your body's capable of, you can actually break down your muscle fibers so much that it becomes toxic to your kidneys, and that then becomes a systemic issue. In terms of run training and endurance training, right? Let's think about your ultra marathoning or your endurance training. Any kind of hard bout or a really prolonged effort is going to result in some sort of muscle breakdown. They've done another study specifically with the use of NSAIDs in ultra marathoners at the 50-mile effort. So what they found is in 89 runners, they did a double-blind placebo trial. So in 89 runners, they took the blood lactate and they took the blood analysis of certain groups, and they found that everybody had an elevated level above what was acceptable for creatinine in the bloodstream. So already you're at an unacceptable level of muscle breakdown that the kidneys have to filter. And if you took NSAIDs, if you were some of the people in the in the analysis group that actually ingested the NSAIDs, you had an 18 to 20% higher amount of creatinine in your bloodstream as opposed to just the control group, which was the standard ultramarathoner, right? So ultramarathoning and endurance training comes with its own inherent risks that we have to understand and keep under control, is that there's going to be an elevated level of muscle breakdown regardless. And NSAID usage on top of that actually increases it by up to 20%. And so that's not something we want to mess around with. We always want to keep your body in a situation where it's primed and ready to work, but also be safe. So we always want to mitigate the risks associated with anything that we're doing. So for my runners, this is definitely something to keep in mind. And why this is so important is because your kidney's main job is to filter your blood, and nephrotoxicity is a real thing associated with NSAID usage. So as a runner, we understand electrolytes and blood pressure, right? Any runner knows the word electrolyte and what it means, okay? And almost everybody as an adult understands what blood pressure is. The other thing to keep in mind is NSAID usage also affects electrolyte balance and increases your systolic blood pressure. So those are another two things that we don't necessarily want when it comes to training, right? And just basic health, you want to always keep a proper balance. But with running, you never want to have your electrolytes out of balance, which NSAIDs will do. It'll also increase sodium retention, which is going to affect the efficiency of your kidneys as well. So already it's going to throw your electrolytes out of balance, then it's going to affect your blood pressure and your blood volume in general. So you can see how just a simple thing as taking an Advil or two before a training session or even during your training session, you may think that you're doing yourself some justice, but for us, the return on investment is just not there. The juice ain't worth the squeeze, and that's the bottom line, okay? Now, granted, this is not going to happen to everybody, which is why it's not going to be as severe for everybody. So I don't want to fearmonger here. Like I said, there's a very small percentage of the population that's going to be at high risk in general. Those are the people that are going to see more acute risks. That being said, you never want to test those waters, and you never want to see if you're going to belong to that very specific group, right? And the widespread usage of NSAIDs in general already increases the population of people who are going to be at risk, and then the population of runners and endurance athletes who do regularly use NSAIDs is also going to increase the population. So it's, while I don't want to fearmonger, and I don't want to say that if you pop them, you're gonna go into systemic failure, but the bottom line is the growing population and the growing participation in these endurance events, along with the growing population of people who are using NSAIDs, at some point that's going to overlap, and you're going to be at increased risk of everything in general. And we don't want you to go down that road. This is meant to educate. This is meant to help you make some certain training decisions and better decisions when you're training, so that you can put yourself in the best situation possible. So that's really what this talk was all about, and how I wanted to just bring a little bit more light to the NSAID usage, and really that it's, again, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. It's got more risks than it does rewards, especially when training. So if you think that you might need them due to an injury, or if you're prescribed them by a provider who may not work with endurance athletes on a regular basis, you do have other options. So reach out to us. Feel free to throw up a comment in the comment section. Plenty of ways to communicate with us. We've got our contact information, phone numbers, emails, all over our webpage and all over these videos. So if you do have any questions or you're hesitant about something, we'd rather you reach out. Avoid popping the pill in general. You always want to be a little bit more proactive rather than retroactive. But when it comes to being prophylactic and doing things in preparation, we definitely have some other beneficial options for you than popping some pills. And those NSAIDs do come with a little bit of a caveat. Okay, so that's all I really wanted to talk about today, guys. How NSAIDs can affect your kidneys, in addition to where your kidneys are already stressed during training sessions, and especially during endurance training sessions. So forgive the rambling. I hope it cleared it up a little bit. I hope it was beneficial. So throw out some comments, questions, concerns. Give us a like. Just tell us, great job. We always appreciate getting patted on the back. And again, if you can hit that subscribe button below, it would help us out a lot. So happy training.